Everyman Podcast. We've got a creature from the deep on the pod today. Mr. Daryl Campbell, brother, how are you?
Hey, man. I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing good. How about you?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Doing great. Clipping and dripping, clanging and banging. Just got a pump. Just doing back and shoulders. Just doing back and shoulders. I felt my traps grow 2 inches, and then they shrunk right back down.
So did you have any, extracurricular experiences with, maybe a short man on a bench reading the newspaper like I did?
No, you know what? Luckily, my gym at my office is brand new, and I've never worked out on brand new equipment. Because I felt like I was like some college recruit. They got all this brand new Life Fitness equipment, like the shit that's got the timers built in, the rep counter, and then the timer. It shows how long your set was, and then it stops and it goes in reverse. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But
you got a gym in your office?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So our company has a division that is involved with Life Fitness. So we have like a Life Fitness showroom. Essentially, it's beautiful.
Dude,
and
that's pimp, man.
Yeah. So been pumping in there, but luckily I didn't have to deal with any interferences like that. You want to tell the Everyman Podcast universe what you're talking about?
Let me break this thing down for you guys. So I'm in LA Fitness, right? And it's the wee hours of the morning where all the Everymen do their bidding in the gym, getting the pump on. Unless you have a facility such as yourself, Brother Jay, at your workplace, and you can get your pump on there.
Blessed.
Yes, very blessed. But so there's a short gentleman on the bench. All the other benches are taken. Now it's 5 a.m. here. And you know me, I'm an everyman, so he's older than me, so I got to give him the respect he so rightfully deserves. But you know what? This particular gentleman is reading the newspaper, sitting on the edge of the bench, not utilizing the bench in
in fairness, he was utilizing the bench, just wrongly.
Very true. You're absolutely. But he had no intention of using the bench because his garb was a polo t-shirt, right? I believe blue and white striped khaki shorts.
And the footwear.
Sandals.
Strap sandals,
up,
ladies and gentlemen.
Strap sandals right around the ankles. No support whatsoever. And he had another newspaper column on the floor, locked and loaded to be placed in front of his retinas for yet more page turning for, get this, at least 30 minutes. So my patience for 30 minutes. Come on. You know me, Jay.
Yeah,
I'm in there to get
unacceptable.
Done.
Unacceptable. And I can vouch for this. I saw the photo. I can confirm the sandals, the wraparound straps. He was essentially dressed as if he were touring a local landmark.
Absolutely.
He was like a tourist. And, of course, everybody, I encourage everyone to take, steps and get into fitness. And, this isn't one of those things where we're saying, we're shaming people for trying. That's not the Everyman way. No. That is not the Everyman way, Daryl.
No, it's not. It's not.
But when you enter the Church of Iron, a.k.a. the Pump Zone.
Yeah, the Pump Zone.
You got to be there to do the work because everybody there is doing the work. There's plenty of great places you can read a newspaper. A Dunkin' Donuts, a Starbucks. You could
Barnes and Noble. You can just grab a chair, man.
You can literally read a whole book there. Nobody will bother you.
Dude.
McDonald's, free Wi-Fi, free bathrooms.
Absolutely, man.
You get a cup. Absolutely. Get yourself a cup of ice. Read your newspaper, then go to the nice clean bathroom, and then leave 3 hours later. That's what I do when I go to McDonald's.
I mean, so the thing here is the guy was disgruntled with me. That's the thing. He was disgruntled with me for peering over his page and asking, hey, you know what? You've been reading this newspaper for 30 minutes. And he went to go take it to the manager, who's a new young guy who doesn't know me. He's not the normal dude. So, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers or any newspapers or his person.
No.
So I just took the Everyman way, walked on, did something else because you know what? We've always got a backup plan, don't we?
That's right.
So that's what we do. And I decided to fellowship with my brother Jay about my displeasure. So
yeah, sometimes when you're running a little hot and you're out in the battlefield of the world, sometimes it's good to shoot a text to your bro and be like, "Hey, am I fucking off here, or should I be enraged?
Is it me? Is it me?" Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not you. Yeah, so if you're in the gym and you see the silhouette of a large Everyman looming over you, shadow you, if it's Daryl Campbell, just let him use the bench. He'll wipe it down. He'll clear the rack.
You already know I'm gonna at least wait 30 minutes, right? That's 30 minutes.
It's 30 minutes. You know how much things you can get done in 30 minutes?
Dude.
Too many.
Dude.
Too many. Yeah, that's unacceptable. I'm glad that you were able to find an amicable solution for that there, Daryl. Mm-hmm. And again, we encourage everybody to give fitness a try, and just gym etiquette. Just remember, it's not a place to read a newspaper.
It really isn't. It's not, especially in sandals and a polo. No.
Like you see somebody sitting there and maybe checking a text or texting a little too long. It's like, okay,
dude. I mean, I've seen some.
But when you've got the fucking the funnies out and you've got the stock market page open, like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
This isn't the library.
Yeah, dude. And here's the thing: I've seen some flagrant fouls, right? Like I've seen Candy Crush, I've seen the text messaging while on the leg press machine. You know what? I've seen some video game playing. Clash of Clans. Okay, all right, I'm a fan too, and I'll let that slide. But the newspaper, that's like finding a PC way to do less than nothing at the gym.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about that choice is a newspaper is probably the least durable medium to gain knowledge from. It's the thinnest paper possible. One drop of sweat, it's going right through that whole fucking thing, and it's broken. So it's like if you're bringing a newspaper into the gym and you're sitting down with it, it's like you have no intention of making anything close to exercise happen.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hope that gentleman has learned from his ways, and someday somebody will explain to him kindly that that's just not how we do things.
Not on duty.
Not on duty. Well, speaking of on duty, Daryl Campbell, you've been on duty this week, and we had a little bit of a different schedule for our podcast. So this week, our interview is with the great, legendary guitarist, Mr. Andy McKee. And unfortunately, Daryl had to hold down the shit over at NFL Films. He's working on a little, it's a tiny little TV show. Not sure if you might have heard of it. It's called Hard Knocks.
Absolutely.
So Daryl is manning that battle station, and he was unable to join us for this interview. So the interview you're going to hear here in a few minutes is a solo dolo featuring myself and the real Andy McKee. Solo dolo. Shout out Kid Cudi. Andy McKee is a special guy. He's not the first to play this style of guitar that he plays, which he calls finger style or finger picking.
Absolutely.
But he's kind of taken it to a whole new level. And early on in about 2007, 2008, Andy was one of the first people doing music videos on YouTube. Now, some of our younger listeners, I know this is going to be surprising to you, but there was a time when YouTube was pretty much instructional videos on how to, do plumbing, construction tutorials, cooking. Like, it was very basic and like very wholesome.
Yep.
It wasn't the landscape that you have now with YouTubers and streaming channels and, First We Feast and all this wonderful content. So Andy was one of the first guys to start putting high quality playing videos of him playing online. And he did a song called Drifting that went viral right before Christmas in 2008. And it ended up, he ended up going over 100 million views. And this is, again, consider 2008, how many fewer iPhones. This is before Twitter really took off. This is before Facebook really took off. This was just purely raw, word of mouth, viral talent. And I was working in a music store, which we talk about And one of my guys that was working for us there came up to me. He's like, dude, you got to check this video. I've never seen anything like it. This is going to blow your mind. So, next thing I know, we're all obsessed with Andy McKee. Turns out he's a big Dream Theater fan. Yeah. Obviously, I'm a big Dream Theater fan. Daryl's a big Dream Theater fan.
DT for life.
Our boy, Zach Rossi, shout out to the great Rossi, was overseas with Dream Theater, doing the Everyman work that he does. And I see him post a photo of Mr. Andy McKee backstage. And I'm like, oh, dude, what are you doing with Andy McKee? I guess he must have been in Europe. And he's like, nah, bro, he's opening up for Dream Theater. And I was like, well, shit. The cosmic canoe strikes again.
Yep. Grab an oar,
get in the boat. We're going. So reached out to Andy. Andy was more than happy to come on the show, and we had an awesome conversation. Went about an hour, and we talked about everything from technique to staying mentally sound and healthy on the road. And Andy dropped some really awesome knowledge on what it takes to not only grow a career in music, but manage it and still be you and not get sucked into all these other complicated little things that are out there that can distract you from that path. And Andy's just he's a great guy. It was an honor to have him on the show. Sadly, Daryl wasn't there for the interview, but he got a chance to check it out. And we're gonna definitely have Andy back on. So I hope you guys enjoy this. In this first episode, we kind of talk music stuff and life stuff. We go over Dream Theater. Awesome conversation about Prince. Andy went on tour with Prince and tells us a little story about how Prince liked to hang out. That if you've ever seen Chappelle's show, it's going to make things seem very, very real. So yeah, it was just a great conversation. And of course, Daryl, wish you could have been in on it.
Me too, brother.
But the Everyman has to be flexible. You have to be flexible.
Have to.
So speaking of flexibility, we are now on Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. So if you are listening to this show right now and you have not subscribed to one of those services to get our episode every week in your inbox at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, please do. Subscribe, leave us a review, tell us what you like about the show.
Do it.
Just do it. That's all you got to do.
That's it, man.
That's all you got to do. So with that, Mr. Campbell, what do you say we kick it to Mr. Andy McKee?
Let's get it.
Get it. Today on the Everyman Podcast, we are here with a fantastic guitarist and one of my personal influences, the great Andy McKee. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. Normally, I'm with my co-host here, Mr. Daryl Campbell. Unfortunately, his schedule got flipped, and he's... I'm not sure if you're a football fan, Andy, but are you familiar with the show Hard Knocks?
I'm not. I don't know.
Well, it's an HBO show where they kind of follow NFL teams like behind the scenes. It's like a very in-depth, behind the curtain kind of look, and they have like a 24-hour turnaround. So Daryl's heading up that project today. So it will be riding solo with the interview today. So Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you're currently up to.
Well, I'm primarily known as an acoustic guitar player, and I just turned 40 this year. I live in Topeka, Kansas. That's where I was born and raised. And I kind of started out on the electric guitar, really, when I was about 13 years old, and switched over to the acoustic in my later teens, and really fell in love with that sound and some of the influences I had back then that really made me want to get in the acoustic guitar. Just really sort of changed my life, But I still play a lot of electric guitar too, and I'm probably gonna have some of that on my next album actually as well. So, but yeah, I'm mostly known as a fingerstyle instrumental guitar player, and working on some new music now. I'm about to leave tomorrow actually to do some shows in California with this Guitar Masters project, where it's me and a few other guitar players, and then we're all going to go teach at my guitar camp out in Petaluma after that. So
that's incredible. And I actually wanted to mention that right off the bat is I noticed on your social media, pardon me, you've been using you breaking out the Petrucci a lot. My group Extractus and our production company Extractus Media, we're also sponsored by Ernie Ball, and we both thank them greatly for their excellent products and service.
Yeah.
They're always so great to work with. Tim Dove is our rep, and he's always Tim's great. He's always so cool and super quick. And I'm a guitarist, but I'm not as I'm not a luthier, so he's able to deal with my silly questions. But what's Petrucci's you've been playing in those Instagram? What's your setup for that?
Those are mostly Music Mans back there. There's a couple Fenders over there. And those are just signature models. Like there's an Eric Johnson and a David Gilmour one over there. Then the rest are all Ernie Ball Music Mans. But yeah, I've got JP over there. Then I've got a 7-string one too, a couple over. Steve Morse one, and then that bluish one's kind of this baritone electric guitar. That's
beautiful.
Yeah, I think they just call it a bass guitar, which I think is kind of confusing, but
I can see that would be a little confusing on a line item. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's pretty much like a baritone. I think it goes down to A maybe rather than B. And then there's like an Axis and then the Lukather one over there too. So,
those are great.
I really dig the Petrucci's, and the Lukather one and the Steve Morse one. Those are kind of the top ones for me over there. But
the thing I love about the Petrucci's is now there's so many different variations of the guitar, and you can get any version of it you want, and it'll probably fit your needs. And from somebody like yourself with your style to our group, it's super heavy. You see country guys playing it. I mean, they make a super versatile instrument, so I can see why you'd gravitate towards it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the piezo pickup and everything too, just the variety of tones you can get out of it is crazy. And it stays in tune so well with the whammy bar too. Everything's just great.
Do you ever use that piezo for any sort of live stuff? Because I know most of your live performances are either your harp guitar, which we'll definitely get to, and your standard Greenfield guitars. But do you ever utilize that? The JP
I actually
live?
I haven't played electric guitar on stage yet, but I'm about to on this Guitar Masters tour actually.
All right, well, we got hopefully we'll see some on YouTube.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, so that whole tour, the way it works is, me and the other guys all have our own sort of section of the show where we play our tunes, but at the end we play together. And so I came up with this part on electric guitar for a tune from Trevor Gordon Hall and a little bit of a guitar solo. So I've never played on stage with an electric before, so I'm kind of nervous, But
I'm sure you'll do just fine, my friend. I'm sure you'll be great. As I was getting ready for this interview, I was really digging through your YouTube, and I found a lot of cool stuff, and your video, the training montage cover is that's just awesome, man. I love it. And
thank you, man. Dude, that's funny you mentioned that because at my guitar camp, we're actually having Vince DiCola come to the camp.
What?
He's the guy
he's a legend, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, I mean, that was like a huge thing for me. Actually, I think the first album I ever bought, it was a cassette, was the soundtrack to Rocky IV because I just loved the music in the movie. Especially those scenes like the training montage and the fight at the end when they played war. It was instrumental music too, so I kind of fell in love, with instrumental stuff. I had this connection with it. My brother and sister were like, "What the hell are you listening to?" Like, this is from Rocky IV. It's awesome.
Exactly, and it's funny you say that, and brings up another something I want to talk to you about is video games. Is when I listen to your playing, and I know you talked about it in interviews, and I see you got some NES shirts on and stuff from time to time. You're obviously influenced by gaming, and I find musicians that are gamers also tend to gravitate towards that instrumental thing because I think there's something going on. Like, so when I was a kid, I was a huge Power Rangers fan, right? Loved it. All right. And years later, I was trying to figure out the connection of like, how did I end up just loving metal? And then one day I happened to, as like a young adult, turn on the Power Rangers, and it was like the heaviest theme song ever. And I was like, oh shit. That's, you know what I mean? Like, that's where the seed is. Like, it's these subconscious ideas creatively in your young mind kind of creep in, whether it's from like video games, or I know a lot of people influenced by, especially like, like anime style music soundtracks and things like that. So do you pull from gaming, and tell me a little bit about what you're into with that, and where that affected you as a musician?
Yeah. Well, on my first album I ever released, actually, I had a tune called Samus Star Drive, which is, sort of inspired by the music from Metroid. And I just had this picture of, the main character Samus driving her spaceship, through outer space, and it's just kind of this ambient kind of guitar piece. But so yeah, I mean, like, that was kind of inspired by video game music, and I can still hear a lot of tunes from Nintendo in my head, and then even more modern stuff too. Actually, on my next album, I've already recorded it, but it's a harp guitar arrangement of Streets of Whiterun from Skyrim. That soundtrack to Skyrim is unbelievable. I think it's just amazing.
My girlfriend and I were watching your video on that. She's a big fan of Skyrim, and she actually wanted me to ask you. I'm glad you mentioned it. What's your favorite place in Skyrim?
Oh, my favorite place in Skyrim. Yeah, I guess. Oh man, I don't know. It's been a little while now since I've played it, so I'm having a hard time remembering which. I don't know if I've got one place that really stood out. I mean, I just love the world though, and the whole Elder Scrolls universe is just so amazing.
I was one of the weird people that I'm a big gamer, and I never got to it. And the first time I played it was actually on the PlayStation VR. So my first experience with Skyrim was in VR. That's pretty wild. If you get the chance to check that out, I highly recommend it.
Oh man, yeah, I haven't done that yet. I do have the VR system, but I haven't checked it out.
Oh yeah, it's trippy. That whole intro with the dragon, and you're breaking out from the prison car, and intense. It's intense, and people play the whole thing like that. I don't know if I could, put 500 hours into a VR at this point in my life, but God bless. So talking about some of your creative influences, you've mentioned a lot of the players that have kind of spoken to you, and our audience here on the Everyman Podcast, we got a lot of athletes, we got a lot of musicians, and what either acoustic guitarists or fingerstyle players, who do you think should be on a young musician's radar that maybe before you had the calling to switch to acoustic, if you could go back and tell young Andy McKee to check out these people, who would they be?
Oh, yeah, that's good, man. If I was just to even pick one, it would have to be Michael Hedges, as far as the acoustic guitar. And if your listeners aren't too familiar with him, he was a real pioneer for steel string acoustic guitar. In the early 1980s, he sort of came out, and he was using a lot of altered tunings, which had been done before, but he kind of took it to another level. And but he was really composition based. He had a lot of education with going to Peabody Conservatory, and he had played flute and penny whistle. So he had sort of multiple instruments, that he had learned on. And one thing that's interesting, if you do ever work on an instrument like a flute or anything that's not polyphonic, you kind of have to focus on melody a bit more. So I think that kind of helped him develop that sense, So he's just wrote some of the most amazing and to me profound music for one guitar, and that's something that also struck me with him, and guys like Preston Reed is another one, and Don Ross, and Billy McLaughlin. Those are kind of my four big acoustic guys. But there's something about someone playing a solo like acoustic guitar that's just very personal, when that person's in control of every note and every aspect, every dynamic thing, you feel like you're really connecting with that person in a different way, maybe than in a band situation. So there's something I liked about that too. I would definitely tell anyone to go check out Michael Hedges for sure. He's got an album called Aerial Boundaries that was kind of the big groundbreaking one, but all of his albums are great as far as I'm concerned. Also Preston Reed. I saw him when I was 16 years old, and he was playing over the top of the guitar neck on acoustic guitar and using the guitar body as a drum, which, percussion had been on the acoustic guitar before with like flamenco and things, but
right.
He kind of really incorporated it in a different way, like where he was really had the drums going and the rhythmic ideas and the melody, harmony, all that stuff kind of at once. So he became a big influence for me too. And Don Ross is a great Canadian guitar player that just really brought sort of funk and groove a bit to the acoustic guitar in a way that hadn't been done before. And Billy McLaughlin is a great tap style guitar player, and he was just very melodic and unique with his music too, and became a big influence for me. So those four guys definitely changed my life.
That's a great list right there. And one of the first guitarist I heard kind of play a style similar to yours when I was younger was Steve Howe.
Oh yeah.
And I grew up. My father's a musician, and he kind of raised me in that regard. And Yes was his big band, and so early on, that was like the first band I got really into, and that turned me on to like Chet Atkins, stuff like that. So I wanted to know if you I feel like if Steve Howe was in his prime right now, he would be everybody's like favorite guitar player, I think, because he's just got such a unique style, and like when you consider, you go back and like they were doing that with limited effects, on tape for, there's some really cool stuff there. All this to say, I'm interested in the idea of this kind of evolution of guitar technique, and how that over time you can kind of trace a line through it, from like you're talking the tapping style to what Eddie Van Halen did in the 80s, and then you have what you've come to do. And my question is, so you spend like a lot of time working on your new material, maybe months, years, whatever it is, and then you put a video out on YouTube, and then within a week there's a 14-year-old somewhere that's doing it. And and like, did you ever think that you would live to see the day where like it's that quick now, where before it seemed like when I was a kid we still had to get tab books, or was pre-YouTube, and like you were kind of a part of that first initial explosion, which has been really covered on your other interviews, and we can talk about that if you like. But where do you think this is going, and do you think this is good or bad for guitar technique or guitar as a whole?
Good question, man. Yeah, so it is amazing now. I mean, to see where it's gone, even, and there was Sung Ha Jung from South Korea. Like when I came out, I mean, he must have been like 10 years old or something, but he was playing my tunes and like Tommy Man and just like everybody, and so I mean, and he's huge on YouTube, and there's even more, there's all kinds of kids that you can watch the video and you can like pause it and just get everything, but like you're saying though, we had to get the tab books or pause the CD
right.
They're like, what's that?
I even had one of those Tascam little guys that slowed down the CD,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. So it's cool that I think it is good that people are able to have that resource, to learn new stuff and everything so quickly and develop it and push it even and all that. But there's, I don't know, some of the stuff I hear though, it sounds like they're going way far on the technique and stuff, and then the music's kind of, it's like, well, I don't really care if I ever hear that again necessarily. I mean, it looked cool and it was amazing, but it's not really like the music itself. Sometimes maybe it just doesn't connect with me necessarily. Maybe there was some component of my listening where at some point I kind of stepped away so much from the technique thing, and it's just like I get it and I understand what's going on, but I'm more interested, like if here's like the Streets of Whiterun from Skyrim means more to me than some of these wild guitar videos or something,
Right.
So I just I hope people can also focus on like melody and what they're actually trying to say with the music. I mean, it's good to have flashy show pieces and stuff, and that's all fine and dandy, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah, man. Some of the newer stuff I don't quite connect with, like the older stuff. But there's also something to be said about like I've heard studies that were done, like some people, after you reach a certain age, it's almost like hard to get into more new music. It's like you've heard so much great stuff, and it's almost like you don't have room for any more or something in your head. I don't know if that's true or not, but I definitely still kind of gravitate to the guys that inspired me. I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe a little bit of nostalgia, but just the way that music makes me feel is different than the stuff that maybe is coming out on YouTube nowadays or whatever.
And I can kind of relate to that because, I'm really tied to the kind of progressive metal scene, and it's like, Dream Theater, which we're going to talk about here in a second, like they're my favorite band of all time. And, then everything kind of just trickles down from there. And, between the Buried and Me and bands like that. And, you know, deeper you go down the pyramid of prog metal, you know, now there's bands like The Contortionist and Animals as Leaders. I know, you know Tosin is a fantastic player. Yeah. And I feel like there is a disconnect between a certain generation of how old the musician is to how they're interacting with the idea of music, because I think there's some young bands right now that are treating music like a promo tape. So like, I don't know if you're like, so skateboarding, right? Back in the day, skateboarding would be like somebody would do tricks on a videotape and then they had to sell the videotape and then everybody learned the trick, but the cycle was much longer than the cycle is now for somebody learning a new trick. So somebody does it on anywhere in the world, it gets on YouTube and then boom, everyone's seen it. You know, I think a similar thing happened with you with drifting. You know, back in, so I guess it was around 2008, 2009, I was the manager of a music store that Best Buy was running, Best Buy Musical Instruments. And and I was so one of my guys there, I was able to bring in a lot of like-minded dudes. So it was like a bunch of guitar nerds and music nerds back there, like any good music store. And a buddy of mine, Ian Vandenberg, was like, dude, you got to come check out this video. And I hear all this slapping and popping and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on here? And it's sure enough, it's, you know, you playing drifting. So next thing I know, I've got a staff of dudes smacking $3,000 Taylors trying to be Andy McKee all day long, you know? And it's like, eventually we had to be like, okay, listen, you can do that on this instrument here, but you know, let's practice not on the, you know, the 814. But, you know, and then eventually, you know, we were able to talk our manager, shout out to the great Eric Fliegelman, to booking you for an appearance. And this was early on in your career. And, you know, I don't know how much of that you recall, but it was, it was great having you then. And it was really cool. It's cool for me. So we have this thing on the podcast, Daryl and I talk about, called the Cosmic Canoe. And we've started this journey here. And we believe that we're trying to enrich people's lives through, you know, positivity and enriching them with knowledge like this, right? And we're on this canoe together, me and Daryl, this big strapping NFL player. Every time we put our oar into the water, we're picking up a little bit of cosmic energy that somehow connects with us and pushes us forward. And every time we make another step, we find a connection that we've already had. And here, you know, I'm sitting there watching. So Zach Rossi, who's on tour with Dream Theater, he's the man, and he was on our show. And I see one day on his Instagram, he posted a picture with you, and I was like, oh shit, Andy McKee must be in Europe. So I text him. I'm like, dude, what's up with Andy? And he's like, oh man, he's opening for Dream Theater. And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, dude, it's incredible. Like, you got to see this. It's fucking crazy. And I was like, all right, dude, let me check this out. So then I'm like, I should just reach out, see if he's interested in talking. So all these different connections, you know, bring us to this point in time, which I think is very interesting. But back to the musical instruments thing, I wanted to have an opportunity to thank you for being an influence to so many of my friends and guys that I've been in bands with. You know, you really inspired a whole group of guys that were, you know, in a different part of the world than where you were, in a different area of music that you were, that, and I know we've all, you know, benefited from it. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming to our humble musical instrument store.
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, I still remember that for sure, man. Didn't we try to do like we played like Rock Band or Guitar Hero or a little bit or something? Yeah,
there was an attempt. Yeah, it didn't work out. Yeah. Yeah. We were new. We had some technical difficulties. You know, it was I mean, thinking about it now, it was nearly 10 years ago. And, you know, to see your career go the way it has, and my career, you know, we ended up doing pretty well and having some cool opportunities, and to be able to circle back together for me to see you know, I've always kept an eye on your career, because it's always been interesting to me because of that interaction. And I knew, because like you're a huge Dream Theater fan. And at that point in my life, I knew like 2 other Dream Theater fans. You know, like there wasn't a whole lot. So like when you came, me and my buddy, you know, shout out to Momo, we're like, oh dude, yeah, he's into Dream Theater. Yeah, let's talk. We're gonna talk. And it's like, hey, I've got a Petrucci. Oh, cool. You know, like it was great for us. But there's something cool about, you know, being connected in all these different ways. And you know, like yourself, I've gotten welcomed into that Dream Theater sphere of excellence that they operate over there. So wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about what was going on over there with Dream Theater in Europe.
Sure, man. Well, I might go way back and let you know how I got into Dream Theater, if that's all right.
Oh, please do. Please do. This is the section where we talk about Dream Theater exclusively. So let's get it.
Yeah. So I heard "Pull Me Under" on MTV. It was probably like 90, I don't know what, 3 or something, and saw the video and everything and was just blown away. And I had just kind of started playing guitar at that point, and was really just amazed, at the abilities of everybody in the band. And so got Images and Words, and started listening to that, and became friends with a guy that was originally really good friends with my brother. He was a really great drummer, and he was way into Dream Theater.
Of course.
So, you like you said, you find one or two other guys, and they're just obsessed as you are. Yep. I was like, yeah, this band is unbelievable. So, and then even to jump back to the anime type thing, we started a band where we were playing covers from anime tunes. Wow. And we were going to try to play at like conventions, anime conventions and stuff.
Hey, another former guest on the show, Ben Cohen from Power Glove. Do you know about Power Glove?
Oh, that sounds like a Nintendo-based sort of.
It is. They're like the first video game metal band. You should check them out. And they are incredible musicians. And their whole thing is they do these metal-ass covers of everything.
Sweet, man. Yeah. So I hooked up with that friend, and we jammed on some Dream Theater whenever we could, and then and I followed the band for quite a while, and then I never had a chance to really see them. But they were coming to Kansas City to do this like in-store guitar clinic and sort of meet and greet. And my friend owned the music store, so he called me up and was like, "Hey, you want to come with me to go pick up John and Mike from the hotel and bring him to the store?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, what are you doing?" So we did that, and I was just trying to not freak out too much. But I was like, "Man, I've been listening to you guys forever. I love what you do." And and it's like I kind of play acoustic guitar now. That's kind of what I'd already kind of switched over more into that. And I was like, "You mind if I play you something when we get to the store?" And they're like, "Yeah." So we went into a little guitar teaching room, and I played them, I think, Drifting and Africa, and and they loved it. They're like, "That is sick. That is so cool." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was just like on cloud nine.
I bet.
And so, and I got them to sign my my Images and Words book and Awake, but then I didn't really get a chance to run into him again. But then, like at the NAMM show, I think it was probably about 2008 or so. I saw John was signing at the Ernie Ball booth, so I got in line, and finally got up to him. Was like, "Hey, John, my name's Andy McKee. I don't know if you remember me." He was like, "Andy McKee, I remember you, man." And he was like, "I was just showing my wife your music the other night, and I'd already had my YouTube thing kind of happen, so I was like, oh my god, like he remembers me. He was like, "You don't need to wait. Next time you come through, dude, just come up here and say hey." I'm like, oh man, just on cloud nine again.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god. So I think he gave me his email address on the back of the 8x10 glossy too at that point, but and so we kind of kept in touch a bit, but then I think about 2 more years went by, and I got an email, and he was saying he was wondering if I would want to open for them, I was like, heck yeah. So this was back in like 2011. I opened for him in California and Mexico, and then like a year later, I opened for him in Asia. And so that was the first couple of times we did that. It was great. I was nervous as hell, like acoustic guitar in front of a prog metal audience. It could work. I wasn't too sure. There might be some people that just really came to rock the hell out, but I figured if there's any band that this might work out, Dream Theater fans probably dig what I'm up to. So it all went really well, and then just, man, about like a little over a month ago, it was really kind of short notice, but it was like, "Yeah, you want to come to open in Europe?" I'm like, hell yeah, man. So I had just been in Asia for 6 weeks, so it was kind of a long run, but then I got over there to Europe, and yeah, we did a bunch of gigs over there, and it's just, man, they're all the nicest dudes. I mean,
it's crazy,
you've met and stuff, but they're all intelligent, smart, and friendly, and all that stuff, man. All the good stuff. They're loaded with it. So, and talented. Obviously, they're all way talented. Yeah. So it was just a huge pleasure, man. And I got to ride on the bus, with them for about half the tour.
The bus is beautiful.
Yeah, it was nice, man. And kind of stayed up late a couple nights drinking with them. So it was fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, man. We had quite the experience at the Dream Theater Distance Over Time show this past I guess it was April. So I've known John for, I don't know, since about 2012. So I've been a Dream Theater fan since like 2007 because I was going to see Yes, and Dream Theater was opening for them on that tour. Cool. So I saw, I heard Erotomania and I was like, what the fuck? What's going on here? Like, I gotta just figure this out. Like, it just something captured my imagination, Mm-hmm. So I was one of those guys that, like you, bro, was, Sam Ash signings, driving 6 hours to shows, whatever it took, buying the VIP thing. I mean, I was in it. Okay. And, when I was a little bit younger, I had a terminal illness that I ended up having a miracle cure with this experimental surgery. Long story short. So my doctor suggested, hey, I had just turned 18. So he's like, you can't do the Make-A-Wish thing, but like, I know some people, think of something, maybe I can help you out. And I was like, oh, I'll reach out to Jordan Rudess on Twitter because he was the only one on Twitter at the time. So they invited me and my family out to a show. And, John gave me his email. He's like, yeah, let's, stay in touch. Like, keep your chin up. And then I end up surviving. And ever since, they're like, oh yeah, anytime, just hit us up. So I end up getting into, I pursue music professionally. And then just like you at NAMM one year, I'm hanging out watching Judas Priestess. So you know who Priestess is?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I was I end up playing in a band with the front woman, Militia. I end up drumming for her at one point. So I'm at that show, right? And because I knew in my head, because I'm a huge Dream Theater fan, I'm like, well, I know who's in Judas Priestess. I see he's got an appearance. It's a pretty good shot that he'll be here. So I was there, of course, and I go up to him and he's like, and I'm there with Dusty wearing on from Between the Buried and Me. And John looks over at me and he looks at Dusty and he's like, what are you doing here with him? Like, how do we all know each other? And, so then it was like, oh, wow, you got into the business. Like, this is crazy. And so we've just been, we've been great ever since. And they always welcome us out, when they're on tour. And so this last time we interviewed John, was our first episode of the Everyman Podcast. And then they invited us out to interview Mike Mangini. And we ended up having a 30-minute conversation on the bus, but their generators made too much noise. So we ended up having like a 3.5-hour conversation over Skype with Mike Mangini, who is the man, as I'm sure you know. But he can go with stuff that'll just blow your mind. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine how those late night bus rides go. It's probably hard to get sleep.
Yeah, it's usually about 5 or 6 in the morning.
Yep. Good thing doors aren't until 7, right?
Yep.
That's and I saw you guys are playing castles and giant, humongous crowds. It's I love that they have that I guess I don't know if respect is the right word, but they have that fan base over there, that they so deserve, because I'm a huge fan of their work. And I wanted something else that strikes me as amazing about your career here is your time with Prince. And before I get to that, what as a fan, what was more weird for you? Playing Purple Rain and having John Petrucci play the solo, or actually playing it with Prince?
Probably actually playing with Prince, I guess,
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
But it's got to be close, right? Like, both things had to be strange.
Yeah, definitely, man. Because, I remember seeing, I think there's a video, definitely, I think it's on YouTube, of John playing Purple Rain like at NAMM in like 1990 something. So I was like, man, he's been, playing that since then anyway. But that was both of those were just, such a trip, and it's funny, like the Prince thing was actually the same year that I played with Dream Theater in Asia. It was a crazy year.
Wow.
Like, what? Yeah. But it started out, my manager had called me and said he was going to forward an email that he had gotten, and that I needed to check it out. And so, it was this lady who said that she was, Prince's manager, and that he was wondering if we could get together, and we didn't even know if it was real, for a while. It's like, this is just so far out. What? But it was, so I flew up to Paisley Park and met with him and the bass player and the drummer, and we kind of jammed a little bit, and then he just had me play some of my solo stuff, and then he just wanted to play ping pong, which was amazingly talented at too. He always had a ping pong table backstage at all the shows too.
Really?
He was just way into it. Yeah.
It's like starting to sound like an episode of Chappelle Show.
Yeah, totally, man. All that I'm sure all that stuff is true too, man.
So yeah, I was going to ask you. So like having that experience with Prince, do you think that the Chappelle Show is probably pretty accurate?
Definitely.
Because I've heard he was a real baller. I've heard he was a great athlete.
Yeah, I have no doubt, man. I never did see him play basketball, but he could play ping pong like level ping pong player.
Hey, once you figure out how to do one thing good, you understand the tools to success. That just technique putting the time.
Yeah, it's true, man. Yeah, but so it was funny. Like we did a bunch of shows in Asia with Dream Theater, and then I just flew right from Thailand down to Australia, and we did 9 shows down there with Prince. So it was like 3 in Sydney, 3 in Melbourne, and 3 in Brisbane, and it was just amazing, man. I did huge audiences, and I came out sort of like for a certain segment of the show, and I had a little elevator, and they brought me up and played guitar for like a medley of about 6 or 7 tunes or something, and then we'd end with Purple Rain. But I would also start the show with the acoustic sort of version of Purple Rain, and that'll be on my next album too. But it was just a real pleasure just to be, have that opportunity to meet him and to be around him, man. He was really, really talented, and he not only did he write all those tunes, but he could play all the instruments, man. He played drums, of course, and bass and guitar and keys, everything so well, man. So
I think he's one of those guys that, I mean, because he was so prolific in popular music, mainstream culture, I don't think everyone understands or maybe appreciates his level of musicianship. And it's almost like that level of musician is almost like a guy that ends up in a band like Dream Theater. You know what I mean? And not to at all say anything about Dream Theater, just that it's unusual where you find these musical geniuses that write pop music. Mm-hmm. That stick with it, and he also he got into a lot of different stuff, but the things he's most well known for are, these pop classics that'll, they're timeless.
That's the thing, man. It really does. I mean, it doesn't seem like it maybe, but it takes a lot of talent to be able to write a good song. And I mean, to have a good melody and something that people actually remember, that's a whole skill into itself, So
it's like one of the things you're most well known for yourself is your cover of Africa, and somehow that song has become a meme. It's like it's like a meme song, but you go listen to a Toto record, and those are great songs. Like it's like I went through a phase a couple years ago where I was just listening to that record, and it's like every song is a hit or could have been a and the level of songwriting that was on display on some of that music is just, it's mind-boggling that if it's happening today, it's not getting to that level of spotlight.
I agree. Yeah, the pop music today, I just don't, it just doesn't seem like it's going to have the longevity that the music we grew up with. I don't really know any of these things on the radio, to be honest, but but what I do hear, it sounds all of it sounds quite similar. There's no real, and I think that's just because there's only 4 or 5 songwriters who are cranking out these tunes for these singers to go sing. It's not a band coming together to write music, and making something really unique. So it all sounds pretty generic to me, unfortunately.
I think the shelf life is pretty short now for a pop act, and you're not going to really see these like generational bands, I don't think, going forward. Like, I think Foo Fighters is probably like the last one. I hope I'm wrong, but they might be like, Foo Fighters will probably end up like Rolling Stones status, like this if they keep going. But like, who else, is out there in that popular rock and roll kind of vein? And I don't know if you're into him, Devin Townsend. So he's one of my favorite artists, and he has whatever you're into. I mean, even kind of along the lines of your style. I mean, Casualties of Cool, he's got that record where he's playing, and like I've watched him from, I mean, every time he comes through, I go see him, but I've watched him, sweeping on a 7-string while singing, these incredible soprano leads, and it's like, how can you do that? And then like,
Yeah.
and then it's like, he talked about, writing pop music and it didn't feel right, and just not going for it. So I think maybe the people that were doing that stuff before, that would put themselves into that system, just don't want to deal with all that kind of,
Yeah.
like the extra producers and all the other stuff that goes along with it now. Cause it's not as simple as, like you said, there's something magical about it. A guy and a guitar just writing a song,
Yeah, or a band too, that comes together and comes up with something unique. It's like there's no risk involved in the music that's being put out now. It's all just, this is going to be a hit. It sounds like the same song we released last week or whatever. So there's not much creativity being pushed, and it's just a bit of a sad state at the moment, I guess. But there's still good stuff out there, people trying and
it is
making stuff.
And especially in these kind of musician circles where you have, people that inspire new genres like yourself, that, your style is, I hear it in, bands like Polyphia and Chan, these young instrumental bands, and instrumental music in general, I think, is having a big moment right now. Did you kind of always, I know you said that instrumental music caught your ear, but is there any instrumental bands that you're kind of checking out now that you're interested in?
I guess that are like kind of strictly instrumental, or that do some instrumental stuff.
Yeah, what's catching your interest right now? Because we talked about some of the pop music and stuff that isn't,
Yeah.
but like what's kind of turning your key for what's going on now?
There's some guys in the acoustic guitar scene that I am digging quite a bit. A lot of the guys that I bring to my guitar camp and stuff, guys like Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall, and Mike Dawes is doing some cool stuff, and John Gum, and all of these guys are doing instrumental stuff, really, but it's just solo acoustic guitar type stuff. And Animals as Leaders is great, and I still, of course, dig on Dream Theater, and so yeah, but there's definitely some stuff I haven't heard yet, but I've heard of, some guys. So I need to kind of dive into it probably, but I'm not too aware of some of the instrumental metal kind of bands that are doing stuff right now, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with. It's like every day there's some new couple bands. Last couple questions before we wrap up here, man.
Good.
I would imagine, I myself, I'm mainly a drummer, and in a heavy band, I always needed to kind of, although I play other styles, but with my band, I would always have to feel like I needed to get myself into a certain mental state to perform, like a little. You want to be calm, but in the metal thing, there's a certain aggressiveness that you have to portray. At least, that's at least how we did it,
Yep.
But there's a certain, you can't be just like, dun, 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 dun. You know what I mean? Like, people wanted to see me like, the devil in my eyes, So I would kind of amp myself up before I played, and I imagine that's not what you want to do when you play. So tell us a little bit about how do you keep yourself mentally healthy while you're on the road, especially like you said, you're in Asia for 6 weeks. Can't be easy being in Asia for 6 weeks. I myself have not left the United States yet, but I would imagine it's a culture shock, even if you've been on the road for 10 years. So you got that kind of stress. You've got, maybe some loved ones at home, or just what's going on at my house. Like, how do you keep yourself mentally sane, like safe, healthy, and then also, like I said, 7:00 doors, Andy McKee's got to go open for Dream Theater in front of 35,000 people in an Italian castle. What are you doing to keep yourself, where you need to be, and so that you can do it every day?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think that's something that is kind of not talked about so much. How it's pretty tough. I mean,
yeah.
And everyone just, I assume, sees, the show, and they see that you're in Asia or wherever, and it's like, wow, it must be just amazing. And I mean, of course it is. I mean, that stuff's all great, but there are other factors, the fact that you're not where you're from. I mean, all your friends and your family are all back there, and every day you're in a new place, and there's new people. And so you kind of have to get comfortable with that in a way as much as you can. So, I've kind of been doing this now since about 2005 or so. And so it's been about 15 years, I guess, of touring quite a bit. Although this year I've kind of reeled it in a bit, and last year a bit too. I've been really trying to work on some new music, so I haven't been hitting it as hard as I used to. But anyway, I've got a wife and 2 kids now, and so that's definitely changed the dynamic too. And so when I go out on the road, I try to actually keep it to about 2 weeks tops. That's normally what I do. But the Asia tour was kind of a bigger one there, just because it was a great opportunity, and you can't kind of pass those up sometimes.
And it's a long flight, and you're already over there,
Exactly, yeah. It's like, why go back again? Just knock it all out. So anyway, when I'm out, I do actually try to meditate a bit when I can, and that helps me kind of clear my head. And when I was over there, I took a few philosophy books, that it's always good to read some I'm kind of into like Eastern philosophy, and some Greek philosophy. I had a book from Epictetus that was quite cool, and Marcus Aurelius stuff, and it's just all kind of uplifting, positive things, and it can help you kind of realign, if you're feeling like depressed, you're gone from home, you miss your kids and all that stuff. But those are the things, I guess, that kind of help me, and I like to have fun when I'm out there too. So sometimes, have some drinks with friends afterwards, and I'll usually have at least like a tour manager if I'm out by myself. But sometimes if we're out with like this Guitar Masters tour, I'll have these other guitar players, and we're all great friends, and we'll probably party a bit after the shows, and that's always fun.
That's always the best part of NAMM is the bars after the trade show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the trade show itself's a bit loud and a bit overwhelming sometimes, but
Friday by Saturday morning, if you're walking around NAMM, it's just hungover musicians is all it is. And like the line at the bar is like, I always would hear like, oh dude, it's a marathon. And like the first year I went, I guess I was like, I don't know, 24 or whatever, 25, and I was like, I powered through it. But then the next year I was like, oh shit, yeah, I can't do that. You can't do this every night because you're walking 15 miles to look at the next, great invention on, of guitar or whatever it is. But
yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, my thing on stage, man, is I'm pretty much just me. So, I mean, I don't try to do anything really to change how I would normally be off stage even. And most acoustic solo guys are like that. There's a great guitar player named Tommy Emmanuel, an acoustic guitar player. He's really amazing, and so like him on stage versus me on stage are like 2 totally different things. He's just like a dynamo kind of,
Yeah.
But that's just the way he is off stage too. It's just who he is,
Well, there's a certain performance is you can not anybody, but most people can go up on stage and play a song. It's can you perform a song and entertain a crowd? Are the things that kind of start separating you as you go up the rung. So, there's different places for that. And I have to say, when I'm watching your live videos, even in your studio videos, you have this certain presence about you that you control the silence, and like your presence is felt in those moments, and like you leave things hanging in the way that your body moves and the way that you let things ring out a certain way. I watched one interview. I think it was, I don't know which one it was. It was from a couple years ago, but it was in Hawaii, the public radio one. And
okay.
You just let it hang a specific amount of time because you knew that's where, like, I could tell where you're counting your rhythm, and you let it play out as if there was a click going. But, everybody else can't hear the click. But that is so cool, and I wanted to see, like, how did you develop that spatial awareness with music?
That is a good question. Well, I guess I don't know if I ever really deliberately did. There was definitely, I guess I took some influence from Michael Hedges in a way on stopping notes from ringing out. Like, that was something that he was really conscious of too. So I've seen transcriptions of his music where they kind of do certain notations to actually point out when you stop a note from ringing out.
Really?
And so, I guess that may have influenced that a bit, but I guess, there's the space between the notes too is pretty valuable when you're in the context of a song. You can say a lot without saying anything sometimes.
Absolutely. And last question here as we wrap up. So one of the things I thought was the most interesting in my research was that you have a little bit of a history with guitar competitions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I myself, I'm a very competitive person just overall across the board. So whether it's, how many water bottles you drink in a day or, push up, whatever it is, I'm going to find my way in there. And so as a drummer, being competitive and being a drummer is very expensive. And it is a very destructive trait. So, and I'm sure egos in the music world. It's no different than being around athletes. Everybody. There's egos, and then there's some great talents that are just super cool, like John Petrucci, for example. I'll for myself, you meet him and you think like, oh, this dude could totally be a dick if he wanted to, like, you know what I mean? But people would be like, oh, well, they would, there's certain people that behave that way, I guess is what I should say. And it's allowed because they're so-and-so and they do whatever really well. But I think it's a whole nother thing to be super kind and caring to people in that way. So the competitive thing is interesting with guitar players because I know there should be a whole genre called competitive guitar, in my opinion. Like, it should just be its own. You should just let those guys do their own thing. And then it's like, oh, I'm a competitive guitar player. And then I'd be like, oh, no problem. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I wouldn't classify it. It would just be an easier breakdown,
It's like, we don't even play music. We just play competitive guitar.
Right. Like somebody who's like, because, okay, I don't know if you play basketball. I mean, Kansas, right? Basketball is in the Midwest, a great sport. So, you're not going to see me play a game of pickup ball with my boys, but I'll sit at the 3-point line and shoot hoops, you know what I mean? It's the same concept. Like, I can do the one basic mechanic of it, but that's where my line is. So maybe we need to set up a competitive guitar playing lane. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. Like a genre.
Yeah, its own genre. Everything's 90 seconds. It's like everything's. It's like NASCAR. It'd be like stock car rules. So I'm doing my research, and you won first place in the miscellaneous category in the 2003 Kansas State Fiddling and Picking Championship on your harp guitar. Yeah. So question number 1 is: did you ever defend the crown? And 2, are you competitive, and when are you going to go back and defend your crown now?
I never did defend the crown, and the truth is I'm not competitive like at all. Even though I've done those competitions, really, how that all kind of came about was I was teaching guitar here in Kansas for about 10 years or so, and I had this student who said, we kind of became friends. He was really into the acoustic guitar too, so we kind of became friends outside of just the lessons. And he said, "Hey man, you want to go down to Winfield with me this year?" And so down in Winfield, Kansas, it's this tiny town not too far from Wichita, but they have this just massive bluegrass festival there, and they also have actually the International Fingerstyle Guitar Championships and flat picking guitar, like steel string acoustic guitar with a pick, auto harp, and like fiddle and dulcimer, hammer dulcimer, all these things have their competition there. So I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, yeah, they got this competition. You want to check it out? So we went down I think it was probably 1999, and just checked it out. And the whole festival was pretty dope. But then, the competition was cool. There's a lot of great finger picking guitar players there.
I bet.
So I thought, well, maybe I should try it, And the main reason was like, this could be a way for me to get my name out there a bit. I'm from Topeka, Kansas. Like, how am I ever going to do anything other than teach guitar? What am I going to do? But this thing's pretty big, and it's just a few hours down the road. So I went back the next year, and I actually played cover tunes. I think I played like a Don Ross tune, maybe a Preston Reed tune, something like that. And I didn't get anywhere. And I went back the next year, and I got 3rd place, and I played all original stuff, and I won a nice guitar and a trophy and whatever. So I was like, yeah, this is great, and I went back again the next year, and I didn't place that year for whatever reason. And so, but I think it was just the next year after that, the YouTube thing happened, or shortly after that, But anyway, doing well in that competition, though, led me to actually performing in Taiwan in 2004. So that was the first place I ever went, almost outside of Kansas, was all the way to Taiwan. They heard about me, and I did this tour down there, and it was probably about a week and a half long, and it was cool. So, you know, things were starting to pick up just from that. But yeah, this Kansas-based one too, the fiddling and picking championships or whatever, the harp guitar impressed everybody, so I won that thing. And, you know, I did well in the Canadian one too. I got second place there once. But really all that stuff was mostly just a way for me to see if I could get in front of some people, you know,
right.
or make some connections. And I didn't necessarily have to win first place. I mean, that would have been cool, of course, but I was okay with, you know, just starting to make these connections, and then suddenly the YouTube thing happened, and it was all good anyway. So, but yeah, so I don't really, you know, care too much to go back and defend the crown or whatever. It's all good. Actually, it'd probably be worse if I didn't win. It'd probably be like, oh, what the hell?
Oh yeah, front page of Blabbermouth. Andy McKee places fourth in Kansas State Fair. Yeah.
That'd be worse than anything.
Yeah, it'd be massacred, man, online. That'd be the worst. And actually, truly, this will be the last question here on the Everyman Podcast. And again, thank you for joining us. What advice would you give young guitarists, just overall, young musicians? What would you have wanted to know?
Put a video on YouTube. No. Oh man, I don't know. Geez, I guess I don't know too much what to say there. You know, for me personally, it was kind of like I never felt like I had much of a choice, you know, on the music thing. And like I said, I started teaching guitar when I was 17. I taught till I was 27. I just knew that I was going to do something with the guitar, and even if it was just going to be teaching guitar lessons at a guitar studio in Topeka, Kansas, you know, that might be okay. Or maybe I'd open my own store at some point or something like that. But I did enjoy performing, you know, for people, and so I wanted to try to make that a reality somehow. And, you know, I just kept trying different things. Like these competitions just seemed like a good way with this kind of guitar playing. You know, how do you make an impact in any way? Most people aren't checking out instrumental acoustic guitar just on a whim, you know. So how do I get in front of the people that are into that? Well, there's these competitions, you know. So I tried that and playing at a couple of festivals, and, you know, so I guess if I had to give a tip, you know, just if you feel like it's in you, just don't give up, man, and keep trying to create your own music, and you know, listen to a lot of different kinds of music, and take some inspiration from, you know, piano players or video game music, or, you know, all kinds of stuff. There's lots of great music out there, and you can kind of look at all the different music that's out there and see what it is you like about this song, or what do I like about this way of playing. And I think that's how everyone kind of develops their own sound. You know, you just take all these influences and you're seeing these things that you like. And when you combine all that stuff, you found who you are in a way. They help you discover what it is that you like about music, and what you want to say with the guitar or whatever instrument you're playing. So I guess that would be what I would say.
Well, that's great. That's a great way to leave it. Andy, where can people get more information about you? Where can they follow you on social media? And tell us where you're going to be in the next couple weeks, because I know you got some dates coming up. That's
right. Yeah. So, you know, I got a website at andymckee.com. So that's kind of the home base. But on social media, I'm The Real McKee on Instagram and Twitter. And then on Facebook, you know, I've got an Andy McKee page and all that. So you can follow me on those places. And I've got a YouTube channel too, but I'm not really that active on it, ironically, even though that's kind of what launched my career in a big way. I haven't really put any videos up in a while. But
well, you're beyond YouTube now, let's just say. You can just focus on the road, brother.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, there's something else to focus on, than just putting YouTube up. But when I get the new album out, we'll put some videos up on there. So, but it's just, you know, Andy McKee on there as well. But yeah, so I've got my guitar camp coming up. That's going to be the beginning of August, like August 1st through the 4th, and it's in Petaluma, California, at the Earthrise Institute is the name. And my camp's called Musicarium. So this year we got me and Trevor Gordon Hall, Callum Graham, and Mike Dawes from the United Kingdom. And we just teach guitar over the 4 days and have concerts and jam with the students, let the students play for everybody, have meals together, party a bit together, all that stuff. So
that's awesome.
Good time, man. Yeah. And before running up to that, though, we got some shows. We're playing in Phoenix at the Musical Instrument Museum, and that's on Wednesday. Thursday we're playing in San Diego at the Music Box. And then Fridays at Berkeley at the Freight and Salvage, and then Sunday is at the Sofia Sakopoulos Center for the Arts in Sacramento.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. So those are the four gigs we got before the camp coming right up, and after that I'm chilling for a few months, and then I got some shows in Europe that'll be coming up at that point. So
fantastic. Well, we look forward to keeping an eye on what you're up to, and we'll definitely be catching you next time you're close to Philadelphia. So, Andy McKee, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Justin. Take care, man.